Well, hello everyone, and today we are going to start talking about fractions. We have a lot to cover, but we're really just going to kind of dive into some basics to kind of help you think about what are fractions, what do they mean, and how can we model them. And so let's go ahead and dive in. So when we're thinking about a fraction, we are definitely thinking about the idea that we have something, a model that is being cut into pieces, right? The idea of a fraction is to break something apart. And what we typically do with that is we think about how can we model something. In this case, I have a rectangle that maybe represents a value. So let's call this value 1. Here's my 1 rectangle. Now, what we can do from there, which is really great, is start to cut that into pieces. And that's where we really start to think about what builds a fraction. So for example, if I was to cut this into these equal pieces, one will see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. So what I've done is I've really taken the number 1 and I cut it into 4 pieces. And then we kind of talk about a value or a unit fraction that we have here would be this 1 piece. If I shade this in, this means I have 1 piece out of 4. So when we kind of get into this idea of fractions, it really is about how do we break something apart and then show the different parts to make it. Now, it can be shown so many ways. That's why this video is going to cover a lot. So let's just kind of like continue down the road and play with this. Okay, so I'm going to clear this out and let's again just start with a model of something. So again, I'm going to use the rectangle. I think it is the easiest way to represent fractions. You may see fractions represented as circles, but I do believe that the rectangle is the easiest. So here we go. Equal parts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this rectangle that to me right now represents the number 1. So I'm just thinking about the number 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide or partition or cut this 1 into equal parts. So let's see here. Let's go with this. Now what we see here is we have now cut this number into 3 equal parts. And then again, if I was to shade in one of them, which is the way we represent how we have this value of something. So in this case, I'm showing that I have this value here. Then again, we can represent this as showing that the number 1 was divided into 3 parts and I have 1 of them. Okay, so really, now, as we come over here, this no longer equals 1. This actually equals 1 out of 3. 1 out of 3 parts. And this is what we refer to as the unit fraction. This is the part in which we show the 1 equal part. And in this case, it would take 3 of these parts to make all of it, but really I just have 1 that I've shaded in. This is the unit fraction. Okay, so I don't know. Let's just keep playing with this, right? Let's play around with it again. So let's take another thing. This time, let's go the other way around. So maybe I'm gonna write a fraction. I'm gonna say I have 1 out of 5. Cool. So let's start with a model. So again, I'm gonna make this rectangle. Maybe. Let's try that again. Okay, we'll make this rectangle. And what we can see is that it has been cut into 5 equal pieces. That's what that bottom number of my fraction says, the denominator of my bottom number. So I'm gonna go 5 equal pieces. Now, of course, we're freehanding this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our pieces won't always be super equal. We want them to be as close as possible. Like I didn't really like that one, so I'm gonna try again. That's a little bit better, but you can see some of my pieces are not the exact same size. But again, because I'm doing this with freehand, I want to get as close as I can. So here's the 5 pieces. You can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And again, if we want to show the 1 out of the 5, we're going to go ahead and we're going to shade in one of these pieces. I just chose to shade in this one randomly, and that's fine because again, what this shows us is we have a model cut into 5 pieces and we've shaded in one of them. We have a unit fraction of 1 out of 5. It takes 5 pieces of this size to make the whole. It's another way to think about it. A fraction is how we cut up a whole. Okay, let's go on. Let's continue to look at this in many different ways. And that's the thing about fractions is there's so many ways we can look at them. So I'm going to clear this out. I'm going to stick with unit fractions. So let's this time say 1 out of 4. Now, if I have 1 out of 4, what that means is I'm mixing it up already. I'm taking the number 1 and I'm dividing it by 4. Okay. So if we go back to what we know about arrays, if I was to draw one array and cut it into 4 pieces, equal pieces, of course, as you can see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. I'm now going to represent the 1 by shading in any one of these pieces. I'll pick this one right here and shade it in, and here's 1 out of 4. So 1 out of 4 can look like 1 divided by 4, which turns into one model cut into 4 pieces with one of them shaded. And we can continue to look at all of this stuff that we're doing. So let's continue to even take this further, right? So next step is let's take another unit fraction. What we're going to do is we're going to show how this kind of shows up on a number line. So we're going to try all this stuff. Oh boy, this is going to be so fun. Let's clear this off. Let's take another unit fraction of 1. Let's do 1 out of 6. Okay, so 1 out of 6. Well, that does say then I'm taking 1 and I'm dividing it into 6 parts. So I'm going to draw a model. I'm going to cut it into 6 equal parts. I'm going to shade in one of them. That's what the top number says. And now we can even show this on a number line, which again, if we go back to what this says, right, we're taking 1. So I'm going to draw a number line that only goes to the number 1. And we're dividing it or cutting it into 6 parts, which now you can see I have 6 parts. 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts, 4 parts, 5 parts, 6 parts. And if I'm looking for 1 out of 6, that would be this very first 1 piece. This is 1 out of 6. And then this would be like 2 out of 6. And this would be 3 out of 6. This would be 4 out of 6, 5 out of 6. And then the number 1, which would be 6 out of 6, which would be the same if we shaded all of this, right? So now we're really seeing all these different components of a fraction. And really what we want to start thinking about is how do we visualize and understand what a fraction is? A fraction is just a part of a whole. That's really what we want to think about. If we take and look at a fraction, it's going to tell us, and let's look at that with a new fraction now. It's going to tell us how many pieces make the whole. That will be the bottom number. So again, here we have 1 out of 3. That's what this says, 1/3. It says 1/3. It also says 1 out, of 3. Okay, these are like the 2 names we could use. Let me fix that. That's ridiculous. Okay, so 1/3 or 1 out of 3, which again can also say 1 divided by 3, which means we take 1 model, we divide it into 3 parts. equal parts. We shade in one of them, which then can also be shown as 1/3 on a number line. So we're going to take and draw a number line that's only going to go to the number 1. We're going to cut that into 3 pieces, equal pieces. Again, there's 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 pieces. And right here is the 1/3 that I started with. It's like a crazy triangle. Well, not really. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. It's not really like a triangle at all. I just meant like a cycle, right? We started with 1 out of 3 as a fraction. We can write it as a word, 1/3 or 1 out of 3. We can write it as a division problem, 1 divided by 3. We can show that as one model cut into 3 equal parts with 1 part shaded. Then we can take that and put it on a number line where we're going to take 1 instead of 1 model. We're just taking the number 1, dividing it into 3 equal parts and showing the 1 out of a 3. We're going to do this one more time. So let's play with this. So here we go. Let's clear this off. I'm going to take the fraction 1 out of 4. So let's walk through the whole journey. First, a word form of 1 out of 4. Well, I guess I'm saying it. That's 1 out of 4, which means I can write that as a division problem. 1 being divided by 4. That's what 1 out of 4 means, which means I can model that as 1 model cut into 4 equal pieces with 1 of those pieces shaded, which means I can then represent this as a number line, which means I'm going to take the number 1. I'm going to cut it into 4 equal pieces, just like we did with our model. And I'm going to label where the 1 out of the 4 is. And then you can see that took us right back to where we were. So here's all these great ways we can represent fractions. And again, what does a fraction mean? It means it's a part of a whole. Notice in all of these fractions, everything seemed to be smaller than 1, which is true, because I took 1 square and I cut it into pieces, and that 1 out of 4 piece, right? This 1/4 right here, it's smaller than the whole big red box. Or here on my number line, 1/4 is really close to 0. Here's 1 right here, so it's smaller. And we'll explore more of this as we go, but really the idea is to start to think about, if I see a fraction, do I know how to read it? Do I know how that looks as a division problem? Because that's what it is. We're just cutting things up. That's division, split, cut, partition. These are all the same words that mean to put equal parts. And then how do we put that into a model? And then how could we put that on a number line? So don't worry, it's just the beginning. So remember, anytime you start with something, it's all about practice, practice, practice. You keep trying it, you keep asking questions, and eventually it will start to feel better. So if you're still going, wait, what? This is confusing. That's okay, because it's going to be all about asking questions in class, working through the assignments, and then eventually your brain's going to be like, oh yeah, all right, cool. This makes more sense. The more we practice it, the more it will make sense. All right, well, as always, appreciate your time and your focus, and we will see you next time.